Burial Plot by Davies. Chapter 1. The Quiet Harvest. The twin suns of Jansen III rose slow and golden over the valley, casting long shadows across the rows of synth corn and protein root. Dew steamed off the leaves in shimmering wisps, and the air smelled of soil, ozone, and promise. Captain Robert Lang, retired, decorated, and long since done with war, stood at the edge of his field with a mug of Orion root coffee, watching the light crawl across the land he'd built with his own hands. 10 years ago, this place had been nothing but rock and dust. A reward, they'd called it, a gesture of gratitude from the unified Galactic Command for services rendered in the final days of the war. Most veterans took their land grants and drank themselves into oblivion. Robert had dug in. Literally. He'd started with a shovel and a solar panel. Now his farm was a self-sustaining marvel. Hydroponic towers fed by underground aquifers, livestock bred for low-gravity resilience, AI drones that buzz through the fields like bees, monitoring crop health and soil chemistry. Colonists came from across the sector to study his methods. Some begged for help. Others just wanted to see the miracle farm built by the man who'd once led orbital drop teams into hell. But Robert didn't talk about the war. Not anymore. He walked the rows in silence, boots crunching softly on the gravel paths. The crops were strong this season. The protein root had taken well to the new nutrient blend, and the synth corn was already waist-high. He paused to inspect a leaf, brushing his fingers across its waxy surface. No signs of blight, no signs of anything but life. A soft chime echoed from his wristband. Incoming message. He tapped it. A hollow display flickered to life, projecting the face of Emma Rance, daughter of the neighboring farmer, eyes bright, hair tied back in a practical braid. "Morning, Captain Lang," she said, teasing. "You still pretending you're not a legend?" Robert smiled. "Just a farmer." "Sure you are. My father says the protein root you gave us saved our whole crop. I owe you dinner." "You don't owe me anything." "I'm making stew anyway. Come by tonight?" He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll bring wine." The hollow faded. Robert stood alone again, but the smile lingered. Peace. It was a strange thing, fragile, precious, something war could never give him. He looked out over the valley, the suns climbing higher, the fields glowing with life. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to dream. A home, a family, a future. He didn't know that orbiting high above, a destroyer-class ship had just entered the system. Its scanners locked onto the mineral-rich crust beneath his land. Its crew logged the coordinates, and its captain smiled. Chapter 2. The Surveyor. The destroyer-class ship the Prosper didn't announce itself. It didn't need to. It arrived in orbit like a shadow cast across the stars, its hull matte black and bristling with sensor arrays, mining claws, and atmospheric thrusters. No banners, no insignia, just the cold geometry of corporate intent. Inside, the crew moved with precision. Not soldiers, surveyors, analysts, and negotiators. Their uniforms bore the silver crest of Delian Minerals, one of the largest extraction conglomerates in the outer colonies. Their mission was simple: locate, assess, acquire. Jansen III had been flagged in a deep scan. Beneath its fertile crust lay veins of zentrium, a rare mineral used in quantum drives and orbital shielding. The war had depleted Delian's reserves. Now they wanted more, and they wanted it fast. The lead negotiator, a man named Garrick, descended in a sleek shuttle that kicked up dust as it landed near the central colony hub. He wore a tailored suit and mirrored lenses that reflected the curious faces of the farmers who gathered to meet him. Robert Lang stood at the back of the crowd, arms crossed, silent. Garrick stepped forward, smiling like a man who'd already won. "Citizens of Jansen III," he began, voice amplified by a wrist-mounted speaker. Delion Minerals is pleased to offer you a generous relocation package in exchange for your land. You'll be moved to a newer colony, better infrastructure, better climate, and of course full compensation for your property. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, confusion, suspicion. One farmer raised his hand. Why would we leave? We built this place. Garrick's smile didn't falter. Progress requires sacrifice. The minerals beneath your farms are vital to rebuilding the galaxy. You'll be heroes again. Robert stepped forward. We already were. Garrick turned to him. Captain Lang, I've read your file. Impressive service record. I didn't fight for Delion, but you fought for peace, and peace requires resources. Robert's eyes narrowed. Peace requires respect. Garrick's smile thinned. Refusal is your right, but understand, Delion has legal claim to the mineral rights. We're offering you a way out, a soft landing. Robert looked around. The farmers were tense, some afraid, others angry. He spoke calmly. We're not leaving. Garrick nodded as if he'd expected it. Then I'll return with contracts just in case. You'll have time to reconsider. He turned and boarded his shuttle. The engines roared and the ship lifted off, vanishing into the sky. Robert watched it go, a knot tightening in his chest. That wasn't a surveyor. That was a scout. And the next ship wouldn't be carrying contracts. It would be carrying guns. Chapter 3. Scorched Earth. The attack came 3 nights later. No warning, no declaration. Just a low hum in the sky, followed by a flash of light that turned the horizon white. Robert woke to the tremor. His farmhouse shook, dust falling from the rafters. He grabbed his rifle, an old bolt-action relic he kept for night creatures, and ran outside. The eastern ridge was burning. He climbed the observation tower, eyes scanning the valley. The farm belonging to the Williams family, 3 generations of colonists, was gone, vaporized. The fields were scorched black, the irrigation lines melted into slag. Their livestock lay in twisted heaps, steam rising from their bodies. Above, a raider ship banked hard and vanished into the clouds. Robert's knuckles whitened around the railing. Delion had made its first move. He descended the tower and strode to the barn. Beneath the floorboards, hidden behind a false wall, was the cache. He hadn't opened it in years. The biometric lock scanned his palm. The panel hissed open. Inside, weapons wrapped in oilcloth, sealed in crates marked with faded military codes, plasma rifles, EMP grenades, a shoulder-mounted missile launcher, a portable railgun, and tucked in the corner, a data core containing tactical schematics and encrypted comms. Most of it was illegal. All of it was lethal. Robert stared at the arsenal. Memories surged, drop zones lit by fire, comrades screaming in 0G, the smell of blood and ozone. He'd buried that life. But Delion had dug it up. He activated the comms unit and sent a message to the colony network. His voice was calm, cold. This is Captain Robert Lang. I've seen the smoke. I know what's coming. If Delion sends another ship, I'll bury it, and I'll plant its crew in a special plot behind my barn. He paused, then added, This is your only warning. He shut off the comms and stood in silence. Outside, the wind carried the scent of ash. Inside, the war had begun again. Chapter 4. Warning shot. The morning mist clung to the valley like a shroud. Birds scattered from the treetops as the low hum of engines broke the silence. Robert Lang crouched on the ridge, his breath steady, his eyes locked on the incoming raider. It was sleek and predatory, designed not for war but for terror. Its undercarriage glowed with crop burners, sonic disruptors, and a payload of incendiary pods. Delian wasn't trying to kill anyone. Not yet. They were trying to starve them out. The ship banked toward the Rance farm. Robert's jaw tightened. He tapped the targeting relay on his wrist. A soft chime confirmed lock. Beneath the far silo, the missile launcher hummed to life. He whispered, "Come closer." The raider dropped altitude, preparing to release its pods. Robert waited until it passed the ridgeline, just close enough for the blast radius to catch the engines. He pressed the trigger. The missile screamed from its silo, a streak of fire and vengeance. It struck the raider dead center, detonating with a thunderclap that echoed across the valley. The ship spun, trailing smoke and debris, and slammed into the hillside in a burst of flame. Robert didn't flinch. He descended the ridge, rifle slung across his back, boots crunching through scorched grass. The wreckage hissed and popped, metal groaning as it cooled. He found the cockpit half buried in dirt. 5 bodies lay twisted in the wreckage. A 6th crawled weakly from the debris, coughing blood. A young mercenary, barely older than Emma. Robert knelt beside him. "You were warned," he said. The mercenary's eyes were wide with fear. "We didn't know." "You knew." Robert stood. He walked to the edge of his field where the soil was soft and dark. He dug 6 graves, no markers, no names, just a burial plot. Emma arrived as he was finishing the last one. She stood silently, watching him tamp down the earth. "You did it," she said. Robert looked up. "They'll send more." She stepped closer. "Then we'll bury more." He sent a message to Delion. "You sent 6. I buried 6. Send more, and I'll keep digging." The colony network lit up. Messages poured in. Farmers who had been silent now spoke. Some offered weapons, others offered shelter. A few sent coordinates to hidden caches of war tech buried after the ceasefire. And from deep in the outer sectors, encrypted signals began to arrive. Old soldiers, forgotten names, ghosts of the war. They were coming. Chapter 5. Ghosts of War. The message spread faster than fire on dry grass. Robert's warning, 6 buried, more to come, was picked up by colony relays, bounced across orbital satellites, and whispered through encrypted veteran channels that hadn't seen traffic in years. It was more than defiance. It was a call, and the ghosts answered. They came in 1s and 2s, quiet, scarred. Men and women who had once worn the insignia of the unified Galactic Command, now dressed in patchwork gear and carrying weapons older than the colony itself. Some arrived in battered transports, others walked across the plains. A few dropped in from orbit, their ships unregistered, their IDs long erased. They didn't ask questions. They asked where to dig in. Robert stood at the edge of his field as the first group arrived. A woman named Sura, once a demolitions expert in the siege of Karos, nodded to him without ceremony. Behind her, a sniper named Rex carried a railgun wrapped in cloth like a sacred relic. A former medic named July set up a triage tent beside the barn. They called themselves the Gravediggers. It started as a joke. Robert's burial threat turned into a name. But it stuck, and it grew. Within days, the farm became a fortress. Trenches carved between rows of synth corn, motion sensors hidden in irrigation lines, EMP mines buried beneath the soil. The livestock were moved to underground pens, shielded by reinforced plating. The farmhouse itself was retrofitted with blast shutters and a perimeter defense grid. Emma coordinated logistics, her voice calm and commanding over the comms. She mapped supply routes, organized shifts, and kept morale high. Farmers who had once feared Delian now rallied behind her. Robert watched her work, a quiet pride blooming in his chest. She wasn't just surviving. She was leading. At night, the valley glowed with activity. Drones patrolled the skies. Veterans trained colonists in guerrilla tactics. The hum of generators mixed with the low murmur of strategy briefings. And in the center of it all, Robert Lange stood like a monument, silent, steady, and ready. Delian responded with silence, but silence was just the inhale before the scream. Chapter 6. Siege. The silence broke at dawn. Delian deployed its first wave, mercenary strike teams, aerial drones, and armored dropships. They descended like locusts, engines screaming, weapons hot. The destroyer-class vessel Prosper re-entered orbit, its shadow stretching across the valley like a death omen. Robert stood on the farmhouse roof, binoculars in hand. He counted the ships. 12. Maybe more. The mercenaries wore black armor with Delian insignia, their movements crisp and rehearsed. Not raiders, not scouts. This was an occupation force. "They're not here to negotiate," Emma said, joining him. "They never were." She handed him a data pad. "Perimeter sensors are live, EMP mines armed, drones synced. We're ready." Robert nodded. "Then let's make them bleed." The first dropship landed near the Williams ruins. Troops fanned out, scanning the terrain. One stepped on a pressure plate hidden beneath a scorched irrigation pipe. The explosion tore through the squad, sending bodies flying. From the ridge, Rex opened fire with his railgun, each shot a thunderclap. Sura triggered a series of remote charges, collapsing the hillside and burying 2 transports in rubble. Delian responded with orbital drones, sleek, silent killers that swept low, firing plasma bursts into the fields. But Robert had anticipated them. His drones, repurposed from agricultural models, launched countermeasures. Netting systems tangled the attackers mid-air. EMP pulses fried their circuits. The valley became a war zone. Smoke curled from burning crops. Explosions echoed through the hills. The synth corn fields were shredded, irrigation lines torn apart. But the farmhouse held. Reinforced walls absorbed the blasts. The defense grid repelled direct assaults. Inside, July worked tirelessly, patching wounds, stabilizing the injured. Her triage tent overflowed with colonists and fighters alike. Emma coordinated reinforcements, rerouting supplies and issuing orders with calm precision. Robert moved like a ghost, appearing where the line was weakest, reinforcing barricades, laying traps, firing with deadly accuracy. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. By nightfall, Delian had lost 4 ships, 2 squads, and half a dozen drones. They pulled back to regroup. The valley fell quiet again. Robert stood at the edge of his field, watching the smoke drift across the stars. "They'll come harder tomorrow," Emma said. "I know." She looked at him. "We can't hold forever." Robert turned to her, eyes cold and clear. "We don't have to hold forever. Just long enough to make them regret ever landing here." He walked to the burial plot behind the barn. 6 fresh graves. He began digging more. Rex approached and asked, "Why do you bother burying them?" "I have a saying, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies 6 feet under." Chapter 7. Emma's Stand. The siege stretched into its 3rd day. Smoke hung low over the valley, clinging to the hills like fog. The fields were cratered, the irrigation systems shattered. But the farmhouse still stood. The gravediggers still held. Inside the command tent, Emma Rance paced between hollow screens, her voice steady over the colony-wide broadcast. "This is Emma Rance of Janson 3. We are not for sale. We are not afraid. Delian can burn our crops, but they will never own our soil." Her words echoed across the colony. Farmers tuned in from bunkers and shattered homesteads. Some wept, others loaded weapons. A few began broadcasting their own messages of resistance. Delian responded with silence, then with a bounty. A transmission intercepted by Robert's comms revealed a price on Emma's head, 50,000 credits, dead or alive. Her face was plastered across mercenary networks, a target. Robert slammed the datapad onto the table. "They're coming for her." "She's already out there," July said. "She's rallying the eastern farms." Robert grabbed his rifle and headed for the transport, but Emma didn't need saving. She stood atop a ruined grain silo, flanked by 2 ex-Marines addressing a crowd of colonists. Her voice carried through the smoke and static. "They think we'll break. They think we'll run. But this land is ours. Every seed, every stone, every grave. We will not be moved." The crowd erupted. Weapons were raised, defenses reinforced. The resistance spread like wildfire. Robert arrived just as a Delion gunship roared overhead. It fired a plasma burst toward the silo. Emma didn't flinch. Robert raised his launcher and fired. The missile struck the gunship mid-flight, sending it spiraling into the hills. Emma turned to him, eyes blazing. "You're late," he smiled. "You're loud." She stepped down, dusting ash from her jacket. "We've got 3 more farms joining. Supplies are thin, but morale's high." Robert looked at her. Really looked. She was guiding the resistance, inspiring. She was the voice of the valley. And Delian had made her a symbol. Symbols don't die easy. That night, Robert moved her into the farmhouse's underground bunker. Reinforced walls, independent oxygen supply, a direct line to the command grid. She protested. "I need to be out there." "You will be," he said. "But if they take you, this whole thing falls apart." She stared at him. "You think I'm the heart of this?" "I know you are." She nodded. "Then let's make them bleed." Chapter 8. The Black Contract. Delian changed tactics. The siege had stalled. Their drones were falling. Their dropships were burning. The farmers weren't fleeing. They were fighting. And worse, they were winning. So Delian made a call. They hired Black Contract. Not just mercenaries, not just killers. These were ghosts, ex-military specialists who had vanished after the war, taking their skills into the shadows. No allegiance, no conscience, just results. Robert knew the name. He'd fought beside some of them. Others he'd fought against. All of them were dangerous. The first sign came in the form of silence. No drones, no gunships, just a blackout across the valley's outer perimeter. Communications jammed, sensor grids scrambled. Then the bodies started appearing. Guards with slit throats, drones dismantled mid-flight, defense turrets disabled with surgical precision. Robert gathered his command team in the farmhouse bunker. "They're here," he said. "Black Contract." Sura cursed. "I thought they were a myth." "They're real, and they don't miss." Emma leaned forward. "What do they want?" "Me," Robert said. "And you?" July checked her scanner. "We've got movement near the western ridge. Fast. Coordinated." Robert grabbed his rifle. "They're testing us." That night, the gravediggers set traps, motion mines, tripwire grenades, decoys. But Black Contract didn't take the bait. They moved like shadows, slipping through defenses, probing for weakness. Then came the breach. A squad infiltrated the farmhouse perimeter, disabling the grid and slipping into the lower levels. Robert intercepted them in the corridor, 4 figures in matte black armor, faces hidden behind tactical visors. One stepped forward. "Captain Lang." Robert raised his rifle. "You're trespassing." The figure removed his helmet, a scarred face, cold eyes. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he said. "Rook," Robert muttered. "You were dead." "Not quite. Delian pays better than the command ever did." Robert didn't lower his weapon. "You're on the wrong side." Rook smiled. There are no sides anymore, just contracts. Behind him, one of the squad members hesitated. A woman, younger, eyes flickering with recognition. "Captain Lang," she said, "you saved my unit on Karos." Robert nodded. "And I'll bury your new one here if you don't walk away." She lowered her weapon. Rook turned. "What are you doing?" "He's right," she said. "This isn't war, it's slaughter." Two others followed her lead. Rook stood alone. Robert stepped forward. "You can leave, or you can die." Rook raised his weapon. Robert fired first. The shot echoed through the bunker. Rook fell. The defectors joined the gravediggers. Their intel was invaluable. Black contracts, tactics, Delian's next moves, orbital codes. Emma debriefed them personally. "Why switch sides?" she asked. The woman looked at her. "Because you're fighting for something real." That night, Robert added another grave to the burial plot. And Delian learned a hard truth. Even the best killers can die. Chapter 9. The Trap. Delian was furious. Their elite unit had fractured. Their siege had stalled. Their reputation, once ironclad, was cracking. So they did what corporations always do when pride is wounded. They overcommitted. The destroyer-class vessel, Prosper, descended from orbit, flanked by 2 escort cruisers and a fleet of dropships. The valley trembled beneath their arrival. The sky turned dark with exhaust trails and the shimmer of kinetic shields. Robert watched from the ridge, his face unreadable. "They're bringing everything," Emma said. "Good," he replied. "I want them all in one place." The gravediggers had spent the last week preparing. Every trench, every tunnel, every irrigation line had been repurposed. The valley was no longer a farm. It was a trap. Robert had studied the terrain for 10 years. He knew every fault line, every pressure point, and he knew how to collapse it. The plan was simple. Lure Delian's main force into the valley, then bury them. The bait was the farmhouse. Delian deployed ground troops in waves, sweeping through the fields, pushing toward the command center. Plasma fire lit the sky. Drones buzzed overhead. The farmhouse took hit after hit, its reinforced walls holding just long enough. Inside, Robert and Emma monitored the advance. "They're in position," she said. Robert tapped the seismic control panel. "Then let's close the door." He triggered the charges. A series of deep, thunderous booms echoed through the valley. The canyon walls, rigged with seismic explosives, shuddered and collapsed inward. Massive slabs of rock tumbled down, crushing dropships, burying troops, severing escape routes. The valley became a tomb. Delian's cruisers tried to lift off, but Robert had one more surprise. From a hidden silo beneath the eastern ridge, a forbidden orbital cannon, salvaged from the war and rebuilt in secret, rose into position, its targeting array locked onto Prosper. Robert hesitated. Emma touched his arm. "They'll never stop." He fired. The cannon roared, a beam of pure energy slicing through the sky. It struck the destroyer mid-hull, igniting its core. The explosion lit the heavens, a fireball visible from orbit. Debris rained down across the valley, scattering like ash. Silence followed. Then cheers. The gravediggers emerged from bunkers and trenches, battered but alive. The valley was scarred, but it was theirs. Robert stood at the edge of the burial plot, watching the smoke drift. Emma joined him. "You did it." "We did it." She looked at the graves. "How many more?" Robert stared at the horizon. "As many as it takes." Chapter 10. The Last Acre. The war ended without ceremony. No treaties, no broadcasts, just silence from Delian. Their ships gone, their forces buried, their claim abandoned. The valley stood scorched but sovereign. Colonists emerged from bunkers and ruins, blinking into the sunlight. The fields were cratered, the crops burned, But the soil remained, and in that soil something deeper had taken root. Resolve. Robert Lange walked the rows of his farm, boots crunching on ash and gravel. The synth corn was gone. The protein root fields were dust. But the irrigation lines had been repaired. The drones were flying again, and beneath the surface new seeds had been planted. He paused at the burial plot behind the barn. 37 graves. No markers. No names. Just silence. He added one more. Not for a soldier. For the farm itself. A symbolic grave. A reminder of what had been sacrificed. Emma joined him, her arm brushing his. "We'll rebuild," she said. "We already are." She smiled. "The eastern farms are sending supplies. The defectors are staying. July's setting up a permanent clinic. Sura wants to teach demolitions to the kids." Robert raised an eyebrow. "That's a terrible idea." "She says it builds character." They laughed. It felt strange, beautiful. Later, they stood together in the rebuilt farmhouse, looking out over the valley. The suns were setting, casting gold across the hills. The wind carried the scent of fresh soil and soldered metal. Emma turned to him. "You ever think about leaving?" "I did," he said. "Once. And now?" He looked at the land, at the graves, at the future. "Now I think about planting." She took his hand. Behind them, the valley buzzed with life. Colonists rebuilding, children laughing, drones humming. The war was over, but the story wasn't. Robert Lang had buried the past, and in its place he'd grown something stronger. Peace. Earned, defended, alive. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, please hit the bell icon for notifications. Thank you.